Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jim Morentz, the Executive Director of the SABER community and the XchangeCore community, and today we're going to talk about some very exciting new applications of SABER and the technologies that have been developed over the last few years to handle this absolutely unprecedented event that we are all suffering through in one way or another, the COVID-19 pandemic. And the focus of what we are doing is trying to not only address how we can all contribute to this immense problem that we have today, but how we look past it. And because it will eventually end, but other hazards won't. So we have chosen through SABER to focus on an area that has been sorely needed in the past, and that's food supply surveillance, which we will implement further, have been working on this, but implement further through because of the coronavirus, but always with an eye to the future. So let's take a look here. I'm going to give you a brief SABER overview since I definitely see a few new faces on there or names on there. We're going to talk about pandemic practices and our partners for pandemic practice monitoring, and then what SABER's techniques and technologies are and what that means now and for the future. If you want to talk, since this thing comes out with everybody muted to begin with, raise your hand. We'll open up for questions at the end. If you want to send a recorded or a question there, please click on that little question mark thing that's somewhere on your screen, and the session is being recorded. SABER, the whole goal is to help businesses stay open longer and reopen faster. The reason is because the longer a company is out of business, the greater chance of failure. And if we don't bring businesses back, communities never return to normal. And we're going to have to face that immensely in the coronavirus epidemic that we have right here. So SABER was created by the private sector to help reduce the burden of reporting so that government can get standardized, accurate, and timely information about business status. Founded as a nonprofit by an organizing group that started with the Florida Division of Emergency Management and added Walgreens, Walmart, and Target, and you see the names up there. The mission is to influence government recovery priorities. Couldn't be more important now. Businesses have a role to play in influencing governments on how this country reopens in the future, but also to enable business-to-business collaboration, because businesses will make this and every emergency more efficient and faster to recover. And we do that. SABER's role is to pass information, gather accurate and timely business status information so that those businesses can stay open longer and get back in business faster. The SABER membership focuses in three broad areas of FEMA's ESF 14, the Infrastructure Private Sector Emergency Support Function. Our members largely focus in food and fuel and pharmaceuticals, hotels, home repair, some water, clothing, hospitals, the things people use. And just to let you know, we're legitimate. Starting in 2017, winning the FEMA Award for Technology Innovation, 2018 Public Awareness Award by the International Association of Emergency Managers, and last year, one of three finalists in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Citizens Award for the Best Disaster Preparedness and Community Resilience Program. So with that as background, how does this work? One way it works is companies make a fully automated connection into SABER, into the XchangeCore, which is the technology that sits behind SABER. As you'll see, we're gathering new types of information, so there isn't really anybody who's providing an automated connection with the new information about the pandemic yet. The second way is companies, even the biggest companies, report their business status up to their executives using a spreadsheet. Therefore, from the very beginning, SABER said, send us what you already are using. We will adapt it into the information sharing tools that we have in order to share that information. The third way is a commercial mobile app, Spot On Response, that collects business status information from the field to be handed out to store managers, even employees, to provide information back into the sharing tools, which then transform, no matter where that came from, that information into National Information Exchange Model compliant formats. And most importantly then, on the output side, turn it into lots and lots of different formats so that anybody on the outside who wants to consume this information can take it in their standardized format, to put it into their web portal or into their incident management application or into an ArcGIS mapping tool for a common operating picture, or mobile app, or my favorite, the free copy of Google Earth. We can get somebody set up to see this business status information in 5 minutes over the phone with no cost whatsoever in their Google Earth. And it's been there for a while. We've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, starting in early hurricanes, and you see here the kinds of organizations and the way in which they use this information. From down at the bottom, the Google Earth, a FEMA's Web UC, the Central United States Earthquake Consortium's portal, Georgia Emergency Management, Florida Emergency Management, South Carolina. You'll see we've had a lot of focus on hurricanes, as you might imagine. All those different ways to visualize the information are the core of what SABER is, because SABER is data, first and foremost. Now, how do we handle that response and taking this tool set that we have for business status reporting in an emergency and turn it into something of significant value, we believe, for the coronavirus pandemic that we're experiencing now? First of all, it's key to recognize why we're doing this, and that's because SABER members are essential businesses. DHS designated many of the members of SABER as essential business, those in the food industry, home improvement, number of other areas. All of them to remain open is, or FEMA designated as essential businesses, recommending that states allow them to remain open, since we are in a federal government here. We have selected for this particular project at this current stage 250,000 businesses that provide FEMA Lifeline services in these key areas. Collectively, those 250,000 sell 80% of the gas. They sell virtually all the food. They deliver well over half of the bottled water, that word is. Operate more than 1/3 of all ATMs, so they weave from finance to transportation to basic food delivery, and employ more than 7 million people and have about $1.4 trillion worth of annual sales. SABER wants to do whatever we can to help those businesses stay open. Now, what do we do during a normal emergency is when any sort of natural, technological, hurricane, tornadoes, earthquakes, SABER's role is to identify problems that businesses are facing that keep them from either staying open or reopening. Well, that's not a whole lot different than the pandemic, but it's different in kind. The purpose for doing that, as I mentioned before, is to influence those government recovery priorities and encourage that business-to-business collaboration. Under normal emergencies, we identify problems that are related to lifelines. So we're looking for physical damage to businesses, structural or stock losses. Do you have employees? Can they get to work? Have they been evacuated? Do they need special credentials? What's the problem that might be keeping a company from having employees and thus staying in business or reopen? Customers. If you don't have customers, you're not going to get anybody coming to or any business coming in. So do your customers face transportation problems or restrictions on entry or evacuation problems? Certainly we see that right now in the stay-at-home orders. Utilities, another key lifeline. Electric, water, gas, communications. How is that affecting an individual business? Can you carry out financial transactions if you get your employees and you get your customers and you have your supply? Can you actually sell them and take money for them? And those supply chains, are you going to keep in business? And is there a problem associated with supply or your transporters or some sort of restriction or waivers? That's a normal set of things that we want to know about a problem related to an emergency. So what does COVID-19 offer up for that? Certainly, there's no damage to facilities. Utilities are not threatened. What is it about COVID-19 that's going to allow businesses to stay in business safely? These are what we've dubbed pandemic practices. You'll hear them referred to as best practices someplace. We think that that's a little bit assumptive on one's part to, this early in this game, to know what the best practices are. So we've dubbed them pandemic practices. And our goal with those pandemic practices is to identify those tangible measures that businesses are taking to meet the safety recommendations. Industry professionals, very, very important. Industry professionals, CDC, World Health Organization. And what we want to do is identify and share how businesses are adopting those tangible measures and share them among businesses and to governments. So we can start to develop a national picture of who is doing what to be safe. What's the benefit? Well, I think there's a chance that we can help to increase the number of businesses that are adhering to those social distancing and other safe operating practices. Because of two things. One is, yes, people are told to do that. But secondly, business peer pressure can result in more businesses adhering. And thirdly, if customers know what businesses are adhering to the best practices, that may very well influence the choice of business and thus the influence the adherence to those pandemic practices by businesses. So we think there could be a network of influences taking place down here. Another benefit is we can monitor the relationship between pandemic practices, as we're describing them, in businesses and infection rates. Really rough, really, really rough. Not making claims to that, but there will be some ways to look at that information and perhaps learn some lessons. But all this combined, businesses adhering to best practices, is a critical factor in reopening the country to commerce. So that's where we hope to make a tiny little contribution. So what do we mean by monitoring pandemic practices? We have been identifying through those private organizations that have come out with things that they say businesses should be doing this. Government agencies, CDC, FEMA recently say you ought to be doing these kinds of things. Well, we have tried to make them very, very tangible by looking at what businesses are actually doing as a result of those recommendations. And these all look little, but in combination, they become significant efforts on the part of businesses to create a safe haven for consumers. So everything from online ordering to contactless payments to having special hours set aside for responders or healthcare workers, social distancing, many places stopping self-serve food, and their prepared food organization, plexiglass screens. You can see these, and we'll look at these in a little bit more detail later. But these are the things that companies can do. And this is evolving. And 2 days ago, one more was added when a company announced that they were doing something related to the physical presence, what they're doing to support customers, what they're doing to support employees, and also the last item there, how they are helping the community through charitable or community donations. So monitoring these best practices is supplementing the monitoring of those physical problems. Did your building get damaged? Do you have gas and electric? All those things that we traditionally done, we now added this pandemic practice monitoring to SABER. So who has this information and who's going to have it on SABER? Well, SABER uses what we call vetted information. We know where it came from, and we can tell you exactly where it came from. And that can be authoritative information provided by a company about their operations. And you see those 40 more companies, and we've had some added in the last few days. The second way is there's proxy information. Proxy information is not going to be very helpful in our pandemic practices. Because these, we're having a proxy. The Hughes satellite system gives us a proxy for whether the business is open or closed based on whether they are receiving satellite transmissions. Not that useful right now. So we don't have a whole lot of the proxy information coming in. But where we are focusing is through a series of partnerships and a new strategy in that SABER now provides the locations and researches the pandemic practice of those stores and chains. You'll learn more about that in a little bit. The payoff of this is that when a store chain goes into SABER and it begins being shared, there is immediate authoritative content about their pandemic practices. And the business has a much reduced level of effort, but still can easily get in and maintain and improve that information. So there are a couple of requirements for that. One of them being the business location data. And the way in which we have been able to solve that is through 3 different types, and the content is the other requirement, and the partnerships new partnerships and some that have been established. So the first partnership is about data, and through a company called SafeGraph, which provides the points of interest for eminent companies, and you see them there. Esri's ArcGIS uses SafeGraph data. So when you go onto an Esri map and you are want to pull general information about stores, there's a layer there. You click on it, that's SafeGraph data. Verizon, Mapbox, hotel chains, whole bunch of other ones. SafeGraph, great group of people who are partnering because of the coronavirus outbreak with many research organizations to see how we can cull intelligence out of this location data. On the SABER part, SafeGraph has provided 500,000 business locations to SABER. And we've pulled out of those 250,000 that are in the food supply chain as our place to start. So a requirement, business location data. We now start with the data that formerly our members had to provide for us. Right away, we have eased their burden. Our content partners are the food industry that are represented by FMI, which is the Food Industry Association, and National Association of Convenience Stores, which is the Convenience Store National Association. Over the last year or more, we have worked with both of these groups. You have, on these webinars, you have seen each of them provide information. With FMI, we have started creating this national food supply visibility. And with NACS, we've done some extensive projects on helping convenience stores improve their emergency preparedness, which is one reason why they're better equipped to become essential businesses today. Bring all those things together, and we have this Pandemic Practices Monitoring Network. Let me talk you through the process from top to bottom. First of all, SABER members and SafeGraph provide business locations. That's the baseline. Those are put into the SABER technologies. Included with those SABER technologies is now this new set of recording of the pandemic best practices or pandemic practices that you saw a minute ago, and we'll take a look at further. Coming in from the right-hand side is the content research. These companies, because pandemic practices are public-facing, meaning companies already know that they need to tell their customers what they're doing. So by doing the research in these food business areas, we are able to identify a core set of those pandemic practices that are being informed to the public by companies that we have from the SafeGraph and SABER data sitting inside of SABER, and are then able to update those companies, effectively seeding the nation with a data set of pandemic practices. Those are then provided out to NACS and FMI, which represents these, and this is all just unfolding, to their members, saying, this is what we know about you in this evolving food surveillance network. You want to add anything? Because after that member outreach, members can extend that content, and it should be in their best interest to become more involved in SABER to keep that information up to date, because as you will see, this information goes widely. So some of the evolving results are a growing body of knowledge on pandemic practices. Data that can help authenticate the value of those pandemic practices, and the opportunity for analysis to inform these practices, both on financial commitments by companies to them perhaps, other policy decisions made at the government level, when we know what companies are doing on the ground to be able to deliver services to their people to keep those portions of the country open. How will that inform the future? And we see that those things become not just available in SABER, but are, and we'll look at this, pushed out. You see the top little illustration there comes from the state of Georgia. We'll take a look at the ArcGIS map that FEMA provides data from SABER for. But we'll do that after going live. I'm going to show you a couple of things. First of all, recall on that the ways the information get into SABER. It was automated, it was spreadsheet, it was the mobile app. I'm going to show you two different ways, one new, the other familiar. And over here, NACS. Now, a company can come in and say, you know what? I am somebody. I am, and here are all the various chains, and I am ExpressMart. Call it right there. I'm ExpressMart. In a sense, they're claiming this. They can tell me that I have, 43 store locations. They'll give an email, and they can then, for all those 43, come in and say, yep, ExpressMart, we are now doing delivery. We also allow responders to come in at 6 o'clock in the morning. We put some markers on our floor for social distancing. Boy, we haven't finished all our plexiglass screens yet, but we sure hope we're going to get those up soon. So I'll have to come back in and update this. But out at our gas pumps, we are giving them disinfecting wipes. Our employees don't require masks, but we do have a child care option where we're going to pay for child care for employees. And we only allowed 5 people in the store at a time. Other than that, I'm learning, restricted seating area is irrelevant to me because I don't have any seating areas. But you know what? It would be really good if we could establish some curbside pickup. So playing this little role, I'm seeing some of the things that I, as a company owner, could do relatively easily. Curbside pickup, it's not going to cost anybody anything to take the credit card over the phone, package up the goods, and walk them outside. So the idea that we are able to have a whole lot of information imparted in a way that a busy business person can digest may help influence what they do. For our specific purposes, we want to gather this information and find out exactly where they are in using all of these pandemic practices. They can describe anything, they can tell us what they might need, and there are a couple problems out of that list that we talked about before from other normal disaster activity. Employee availability certainly is a problem that they might want to share with others, and problems with supplies or others. Company can then also self-certify that they are making every appropriate effort to follow the guidelines of CDC and OSHA. Is this valuable? If I'm a consumer and I see that, yes, I might find that valuable. They then fill out their information. We validate who they are. That information comes in, is in fact validated to make certain that ExpressMart is being, information is being added by the right person. And they then have the ability to go in and update that information. That also is available in the SABER Mobile App. You see that over here on the left-hand side. If I come into my pandemic practices, I've got my little pandemic forum here, a couple different tabs. We've got the traditional problems there, but I'm just going to click on the pandemics. I've got my status comments, and I can do this one, and this one, and this one. And I could go off and save those. When I then do so, they become available to me through my use of the tool set. Here's one of the that is doing this. And they also then get passed to SABER so that SABER is able to understand all of the different things that we're doing. And let's see, yeah, here was one of those pandemic best practices there in their COVID prep. And they're doing in-store pickup, changed business hours, making deliveries, limiting the number of customers, and have created flow control or social distance markings. So those who are using the app can update. Those who are receiving the information through SABER are getting the most current information. And it all becomes part of a network that drives information to maps and other forms of data. Because again, SABER is data. This happens to be the SABER map, and we have, let's see, where are we? Let's just pick a place down here somewhere. I'm just going to grab a few things over in this area, down in that Louisiana area, just for the heck of it. And I could also come in here and do this by brand, select one of the brands that we were doing, so I could go off and cut the data that way. But then I click over here, get details, just so we can keep this moving. Pull up this, and what we have are, looks like we've got some Associated Grocers, we've got some Conoco, we got somebody who hasn't provided their icon yet, so I'll click on one of them. That's Valero Energy. So just in that area, looks like we've got maybe only 3 that have been assessed at this point. But if you look at Conoco, we can see that they're doing social distancing markers, customers, limiting the number of customers in stores, employees have paid sick leave, employees have extra appreciation, hardship pay. Okay, actually, let me do this. These people don't have hardship pay. So if I want to play a little bit just on the SABER maps, I can come down here, and I'm only interested in those who have hardship pay. And by doing that, I find that, in fact, of those folks that we had up there, the hardship pay happened to be ConocoPhillips. And we have 29 ConocoPhillips out of the 218 that we had previously, and we know that they are doing hardship pay. So we can do some analysis of who is doing what, even just on this basic SABER map. But as I said, it's data. So let's come over here, and this is familiar to many of you, an ArcGIS map. The SABER data is taken by several organizations, Los Angeles County, FEMA, State of Arizona, the Virtual USA coming out of the National Information Sharing Consortium, and FEMA publishes a SABER feature service. There's called the SABER Business Disruptions. Here we see, what do we have? Yeah, Macy's department store, and they are, their status, actually all Macy's are closed now. What else do we have around here? There's another Macy's somewhere. There's got to be some more other things. Yeah. Oh, there was a Bloomingdale's and a Blue Mercury and a couple of others. So the data is what's valuable. Once you get into ArcGIS online, you can do things like pull the data out and take a look at all these different variety of different features that are in there using some of those capabilities. So you can play with the data much more than you can with the SABER maps once you take it into your WebVOC or your ArcGIS Online or any other analytical tools that you want to have. It means that we can do things with data we never had before. We could maybe start to look at a return on investment, simply knowing that a day in an ICU costs upwards of $10,000. Somebody could ask the question, do sneeze guards pay for themselves? Well, you can get an awful lot of sneeze guards for $10,000. And if your town, city, had sneeze guards at every commercial location to prevent the transfer between customers and employees of, heck, don't think COVID-19, think the flu. How far would that $10,000 go? And if that's the case, FEMA hazard mitigation funds perhaps could best be used for something as simple as sneeze guards. We save lots of money with the hazard mitigation by buying houses and moving them out of the floodplain. Very few of the hazard mitigation programs cost a couple of $100s to potentially save $10,000. These are some of the questions that we might be able to ask because we've never had this data before. Plus, this doesn't end. Well, now hopefully COVID-19 ends, but hazards don't end. The future network that we're building here with 250,000 food supply outlets allow us to be able to address all those other hazards when they come. And we believe we can do that because there will be a vested interest on the part of everybody who starts working with this data on the business side to use it now. And hopefully we can not only learn those lessons, but SABER will be able to continue through state business emergency operations centers, through FEMA and through FMI and through NACS and through other associations to be able to maintain the attention of businesses to doing this type of business reporting so that the next time there's a tornado, businesses can report very quickly, efficiently about their status so that, very simple example, if businesses are open, that reduces the need for FEMA and other resources to descend upon the location. not only reduces the need, but it helps to focus the need. That if we know there are stores surrounding a tornado location that already are operating and normally handle 80% of the gas, half of the bottle of water, a huge amount of food every day, then maybe we don't need to have some of those supplies brought in from the outside. These are the kind of things that are questions for the future can be asked because we've never had this data before. So what's in it for you? How about becoming a SABER member? You can gather information out of saberspace.org, coronavirus.html, where you can register for the mobile app and register to provide information about businesses. You can go on the SABER website and see the data, and you can then join SABER, request access to our APIs so that you can take that data and move it into all of the tools that you want to use and hopefully use on an everyday basis. So with that, I say thank you, and let me come over here. We've got a really good group out there. Let me open this up for conversation. Let me see do we get any questions now? Nobody wrote any questions. Let me see whether we got anybody whose hand is raised. Let's see. I do have a question there from one person. Let me just check others. No. All right. Let me get a question here from, where did he go? Sorry, I lost him. That question is from Casey Chartrand. Is data stored on SABER considered public domain? How long is it retained? So can companies download data from other companies? The purpose of SABER is to share. So the answer to all those things is if you are a SABER member, you can have the data of other companies. And why is that not an issue? Because we're not asking for anything more than what you put on your website. Is your business open or closed? Well, I'm going to guarantee you're updating Google Maps with that information. Is your business open or doing these pandemic best practices? Well, that's where we got the information from your website. So the whole purpose of this is to share. And when somebody signs up, there's a big disclaimer there that says, we can tell you who your information goes to, but I make no guesses about who they share that information with, because many, many organizations are taking the SABER data, putting it on their website, and sharing it out to the public. So absolute key is that this is meant to be shared. See another, Daryl Lowry says, do the companies in SABER include transportation companies, suppliers, and suppliers, CPGs, etc.? Some do. Our focus has been on the food delivery through the stores. We have probably through our next level up, the food distribution companies, we probably have 30 to 40,000 food locations where we know the distribution channels, and the ones that we are able to, and the channel from that distribution site out to the locations has not been a focus at this point, but where we have them, we include them, and we work with the associations to help us identify and get the message out to those organizations. So, Daryl, if you've got a pathway for this information, would love to talk with you. And you've got my email address right there in the bottom right-hand corner. Dave Jones is coming in there. Does the SABER app have the ability to allow the submission of pictures for them to be accessed as a web service like a feature service? Yes, you can. Submission of pictures is part of the task. Yeah, I'll come down here and let me just do this. Yep, you just in the quickest way possible. Spot report. Somebody comes in there. They can grade their level from it's a report or it's a watch or there's a limited activity or something is closed. They fill out the information. You then come in here, you add media. I can come off to my camera and picking up my phone right here. You see me sweeping around and there's the page. Click on that and I can collect as many pictures as I want to. All of them are associated with their geographic location, and that allows them to where we go. Okay, well, I'll put this back up so you don't have to look at my desk. And that allows you to share that information through SABER to be able to grab that information. And let's see, that was good use of the questions there. Let me just check and see whether anybody else has any that have popped up. But I will also now turn on, it tells me I have unmuted all attendees, and if you have full audio control, you may be able to unmute yourself. That doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of confidence in that. But you can raise your hand or ask a question, and if you do have something to say, go ahead, try unmuting yourself. Let's see. A question just popped up from, oh, Christine, how are you? I wish we could talk to each other. Does SABER anticipate going global with this platform? Curious to see how it will support future disaster events around the world. Just got off a conversation this morning with a group associated with the United Nations. Have no idea on that. The platform certainly, we are collecting, using the Johns Hopkins data, global picture of the coronavirus outbreak. That's the first time we've had global information that we have paid attention to on a daily basis. But you know, it's all on the cloud. So where it's accessed from and where it goes is entirely up to the audience. All right, that seems to be. If anybody can unmute yourself, please feel free to. Otherwise, we got a, you're welcome, Christine. Good talking to you again, and hopefully let's chat. And seeing no more questions, I appreciate your time today, and join us. This is an opportunity for every state with every business emergency operations center to be able to drive this valuable information in, and for every company to be able to offer the information up to be able to see through government to influence government priority setting, to businesses for business-to-business collaboration setting, and eventually it gets out to the public. And actually, one quick note, when you register and put your information in there, we give you a little URL that you can paste into your Google My Business account that allows people to go from Google My Business. When they click on your business, you say we're open, and you can now say, and this is what we're doing to protect you. So you can click and come right into SABER. Question on the briefing slides? Yes. The video will be available and the slides as well, and we'll have a newsletter going out at some point next week to get that out. If you need something sooner than that, shoot me an email. Yes, my email's back up there, and I can shoot those out to you individually. Hearing nothing else, let me wish you all a safe next month until we connect again.